Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. If the company wants you to use specific kit, they have to provide it. This is exactly what our OP showed by his actions in our first story. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. If I'm not issued the equipment, I can't use it. My workplace requires some yearly trainings. One just came up, and it reminded me of this. I work for a government agency. Like most government agencies, ours is often underfunded and understaffed. While we often have all the equipment necessary to perform our jobs, some of the computers, software, etc. are not recent, which can make our jobs more difficult. I also sit in a cube. There are a few dozen people on our floor. Sounds travel, so you can often hear what's going on a few cubes away. We also have all sorts of phone calls and whatnot, so a lot of people have earpieces for the phone. While you can allegedly get one issued to you, I think this is pretty rare, so most people bring one from home. I have one from an earlier job, but even so, a $10 headset works fine. I had one coworker who's on the phone a great deal, hours a day, and had asked for a headset but hadn't been issued one. We'll call them Leslie. Then we were all instructed to complete a training on our computers, which consisted of a couple of hours of videos. Most people used their headsets. Leslie started doing the training with the computer speakers. To be fair, Leslie did this at a pretty low volume, but still loud enough that it was audible to adjacent cubes. Someone complained, and Leslie's boss came over to ask Leslie to use a headset. Leslie responded, "I've asked for one, but haven't been issued one yet." Leslie's boss asked Leslie to bring one from home, to which Leslie responded that they couldn't be made to pay to provide their own work equipment and that training was due the next day. So Leslie finished the training that afternoon without headphones. After that, Leslie was miraculously issued a headset. And our second story, Deli dealing revenge. I worked in a deli a few years ago. I had a customer who always acted like a jerk. When we saw her coming, we'd act like cleaning the slicer or whatever was imminently life and death. So last man standing had to get her. Every time she wanted samples of at least 8 things before deciding. Normally what happened is a customer tried a sample and decided yay or nay before going on to the next one. This one always demanded she try everything and then made a decision at the end on the one she wanted. And while it added a bit of time, we weren't going to ask her after each one if she wanted it or not before putting it up. Now, the policy of the store is that once you're done with something, you put it back. But this time, and apparently other times when I had the pleasure of not having her as a customer, she decided to complain about it to me. She very rudely asked, while I was wrapping up the third meat she'd wanted to try, why I didn't just leave it out and get the 4th one she wanted a sample of. I calmly explained the policy, and while she bitched about it, I tried to act sympathetic while I explained. Yeah, I understand, but we try to get it wrapped up and put away so it doesn't attract flies, and also we don't want the meat unrefrigerated. Still with the bitching. Well, you should have someone else who wraps it up so it doesn't take so long, and it just doesn't make sense that you put it up when I might want to buy that one, and just blah, blah, blah. I mean, never mind the other things we have to do. We should have an employee just to wrap up our cheeses and meats? Also, shouldn't she know the system by now? I've had her as a customer at least 4 times before this. Cue lots of sighing, lots of looking at her watch while I place the meat back in the fridge and look for the next one. Well, 4 samples later, she decides on the one she wants, except this time she wants 4 very thick slices of the meat because she's going to make a platter. This is, of course, the most expensive meat we have, by the way, and our premium brand. So I took my time taking it back out. After cutting the slices, I put it on the scale. Then I leaned over slightly as if I was trying to see the weight scale number, and with my left wrist, slightly hidden behind the angle, pressed against the scale, and added around $1.30 more to the order. I chirped, "Have a great day," to her afterward. She still came in right up until the day I quit. She was still rude every time. We'd do stuff like this, or we'd slow down drastically whenever she'd start in on us. Every time. And as a side note, she totally had that "I need to speak to your manager" haircut. And our next story. Don't litter, folks. You might find yourself at the receiving end of my devious father. This was many years ago when I was around 5. 23 years ago. So it's more about my father instead. This does contain some mild vandalism, so here's hoping it doesn't get removed. My house was on a lower class side of town, mostly poor folks and retirees who'd lived there before it went downhill. Our backyard butted right up against an alleyway that was a constant source of problems. As an example, we had a 15-foot diameter trampoline stolen from our backyard. This thing had been rusted together, so I could only figure they popped it up on its side and rolled it away like a big tire. Anyways, back to the story. The house across the alley from us was a duplex kind of thing, and the landlord would rent to literally anyone. One guy he rented to was a junkie who ran his gig literally out of his kitchen window. Cars would pull up through the alley, into the yard, hands would move back and forth, and the car would drive away. This guy legit had a drive-through. It didn't take long for my parents to find all kinds of undesirable trash migrating its way into our yard. My parents were worried about my dumb 5-year-old butt getting into something or stabbing myself with something that could decidedly harm me. My mother was a nurse before being disabled in a severe car accident and had been infected with hepatitis C while working at the hospital due to a needle that had been missed. So she was super worried about this for me as well as a handful of other kids in the neighborhood. Conversations with the landlord, including gathering evidence, made no difference. He didn't live there. Why did he care? Eventually, my parents tried to call the cops. The local PD was not helpful. They said they couldn't investigate or even send out a car on someone's word. This wasn't our first problem with the local cops either after having our cars and other things broken into or stolen. They told my parents to write down license plate numbers, and if any matches a known felon or someone with a warrant, they would investigate. So my mother sat at the window for a full day and wrote down every plate she could see, hiding carefully the whole time. She ended the day with over 100 plates. That's how busy this guy was. We faxed, remember the 90s, the numbers along with a letter explaining what the numbers were for and who we'd spoken to with the PD. Nothing happened. After several weeks, they called back and were told that there were no matches of any kind. After another week of the problem simply getting worse, my father decides to take matters into his own hands. One night, with no moon, he sneaks into the driveway and throws roofing nails he'd bought the previous day all over into their area. Hundreds of them. We watched for weeks as seemingly every tweaker in town would stop and almost immediately have to fix flats. Evidently, either business dwindled so much or the renter figured out someone was messing with them, both, that they finally moved. The landlord spent over 2 weeks of having cleaning crews and the like over, throwing out huge mounds of garbage, and repair crews to fix damage that I later found out was caused by the renter. It seems they trashed and stripped the place before disappearing some night without us noticing. The moral here? For the landlord, be more selective who you let live in your house, maybe. And our last story. Your space? I don't think so. Many years ago, I was serving in the Royal Navy as a junior officer. My ship was alongside HMNB, Her Majesty's Naval Base, Devonport, Plymouth, England. I was, through a bit of luck and quick thinking, in possession of a coveted mobile car pass. These were rarely issued and were highly sought after, as it allowed me to park in almost any parking space on the base, and was so useful in getting all the gopher jobs that I got as a very junior sub-lieutenant. The pass is displayed in the windscreen and shows the rank and name of the vehicle's driver, as well as the number plate of the vehicle. Devonport is the largest naval base in Europe, around 2 miles as the crow flies from one end to the other. My ship was at the southernmost jetty. One morning after returning, having completed yet another errand for my boss, I tried to park my car on the jetty near the ship. Unfortunately, there was no space, but I found one outside of a workshop close by. Noting that there was no signage indicating ownership of the space and that it was a clear parking space, I pulled my car in and went back to the ship. A couple hours later, I was jobbed off with another junior officer on another errand somewhere else in the dockyard. We were both in our uniforms as we walked off the ship and headed to the car. A white van was parked across the back of my car, blocking my exit. Must be making a delivery, I thought, so I went into the workshop adjacent to my car and walked up to the first person I saw, a civilian contractor wearing grubby overalls. "Excuse me, do you know whose van that is outside?" "Yeah, mate, that's Dan's." "Where can I find Dan? His van's blocking my car in." "Dan, that Navy C is here to move his car." A huge mountain of a man emerges from an office doorway, again wearing similar dirty overalls. "You parked in my effing space, you effing C." It definitely wasn't his space, but I thought it wise not to escalate the situation. I just wanted my car back. Sorry, didn't realize. Can you move your van so I can get my car out, please? Nope, I'm on my lunch break and don't do any work for you Navy Seas when I'm on my lunch break. It was around 10:30 in the morning. So when can you move your van? When I go home. Now F off. Taken aback, I had a flash of inspiration. Look, we've clearly gotten off on the wrong foot here. How about I help you? You're busy having your lunch and I was clearly in the wrong for parking in your space. How about you give me the keys and I'll move your van? I'll then move my car and park your van for you. Dan gave me a long, hard look. The cogs were turning quicker than he was used to. Okay, here's the keys. If you do any damage to the van, I'll know. No problem, I'll move my car, then park it. He threw the keys at me, not realizing the deliberate vagueness in my choice of words. I left the workshop and went to the van, tossed the keys to my car to my colleague. Follow me. I pull the van forward and my oppo pulls my car out. I then lead him to the opposite end of the dockyard, around 2 miles away, in a straight line, 3 to 4 to drive it. I park the van amongst some other similar white vans and jump back in my car. We then drive back to the workshop. I get out and find Dan again. Oh, look, you took your effing time. Never drive a van before? Yeah, I've only done a couple miles in a van. It's all a bit new to me. Sorry, here's your keys. Cheers. Now F off and don't park in my effing space again. The ship sailed that afternoon, so I never found out what happened after that, but I'm guessing that Dan had, at the very least, a long walk, but probably had to search the entire base, all 650 acres of it, to find his van. I bet that was fun. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.